yeah, like I say, I mean, it was the only nuclear regiment in the British Army, and I only recently learned that we basically have a 30-minute lifespan.
The heat and blast is so severe that it can kill and can destroy buildings for up to 5 miles from the explosion.
Actually, if you were on the Autobahn and you saw one of these things, they used to have a procedure where you used to lock them in and pull them over. The Soviets at the time had special units to come and take us out.
Were the lads kind of fingers crossed that we don't go into action, because if we do, it's going to be the end of civilization as we know it? Michael or Spud, how are you, brother?
I'm doing all right, thanks, Chris. Just getting over a bout of flu, but besides that, I'm doing okay, thank you. Yourself?
Yes, mate, we're wonderful. We're wonderful. I like your t-shirt.
Yeah, Bedford MK 4-tonner, dropping you off at the world shithole since the 1960s.
Are they still?
I don't think so. No.
Are they still in operation?
I doubt it. They use foreign vehicles now, German vehicles, I think. But many a times I've been to the ranges in one of these and they're full of diesel fumes and
yes, grabbing your seat at the back so you can lean out the canvas. Yes. So, Spud, you contacted me, and you mentioned the 50th Missile Regiment Royal Artillery, and I was not aware of it. This is kind of like a Cold War thing. But before we talk about that, you were a junior leader.
I was indeed.
Which I find fascinating.
That's me. 17 years old.
Yes. We've all got our photo, haven't we?
Yeah.
And it all makes us think the same thing. My God, I was young then.
Yeah. Fresh-faced.
So, and the recruiting office, let's start with that, because that's an interesting place to be, especially the amount of people we've had on the podcast that have said they went down to the recruiting office to join this thing, and then they got talked into joining this unit or regiment instead. They'd come up with these reasons, wouldn't they? Why no, you're not suitable for that. But we've got you a job stacking blankets, packing parachutes.
Yeah, I mean I think that was down to where the shortages were, and I think the recruiting sergeants were basically giving, look, the infantry's down on men, the Royal Artillery's down on men, so let's persuade any recruits coming through the door to sort of look at that and try and promote that, rather than, like I said, I wanted to go into REME, but they told me I was too thick. So, and the Royal Engineers as well.
So that's the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, is that right, REME?
Yeah. I wanted to be a mechanic, to be honest, and that was the best way of getting qualified without, having to fork out any money. So,
and you ended up around nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Eventually, I mean, 50 was the only British nuclear regiment in the British Army. I was in 5-1 battery. I just want to say hello to all the lads there if they're watching that. 5-1 battery came from 2-4 Missile Regiment, which was based in Dortmund, and they basically chopped it down and just made the one regiment, I think, which was just 50. Yeah, like I say, I mean, it was the only nuclear regiment in the British Army, and I only recently learned that we basically had a 30-minute lifespan. Now, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard it from ex-squaddies that have said that the Soviets at the time had special units to come and take us out because, you launch one of them Lance missiles, they've got a range of 75 miles. You could put a nuclear warhead on it and take out an entire tank division. I mean, it's an area weapon. So I know they call us drop shots and cloud punchers and, we can't hit a target, but, it could be like a mile out off on a target and it'd still get them. So, because another nickname for the regiment besides Miserable and Tracksuit Regiment was Missile 50 Missile Regiment. But as my mate Dave Ilias says, it didn't matter if we missed by a mile. We'd still get you anyway because we were nuclear. So, but yeah, that was one of the things. And then it was disbanded in 93. So
what's it like, Michael, what's it like then when junior leaders, for friends at home, junior leaders it is what it says on the tin. It's where youngsters who are so keen from school that want to join up that they don't have to wait until they're 18.
Yeah.
Where you can sign on your own dotted line. You go at 16 where your parents have to sign you off, which can be, that's been problematic for people over the years when their mum says, nope, I don't want you joining the military. Where did you go and train? Imagine you're young, you're very pliable.
Yeah.
Which is a euphemism for prone to being bullied and stuff. How was it?
Well, I'm a member of the Facebook page Junior Leaders Regiment Royal Artillery, and a lot of lads have a lot of good things to say about it. But for me personally, I found it. I didn't really like it, if I'm honest. We had one guy. I'm not going to mention names, but I mean, he's basically a right vicious bastard, and there was a lot of bullying that went on, and it still goes on. I mean, all that stuff at Deep Cut and things like this, but I think it's intrinsic and systemic within. Well, it was at the time anyway, within the British military that, there was a lot of bullying about. I mean, they got a lot of lads there that, a lot of them probably sociopaths or suffering with psychopathy, and I wasn't like that. I'm more sort of empathic in my nature. And training wise, they used to take us on what was called, it's 1977 now, so it's a long time ago, but I think it wasn't a BFT, battle fitness test. It was more of a, basically you had your pack on and a sweatshirt and you had to carry a gat and run about 5 miles or something. I mean, I used to come back puking up at the end of it, It was just, that was always on a Sunday morning, We weren't allowed any drink or anything like that. So, but, it was what it was. We had, I personally, we had some good sergeants in charge of them. One of them was a guy called Tom Tippett, who was from 29 Commando Regiment, who was quite a character, really. And Nigel Randall, who was from 47 Field. Tom Tippett, because we're all teenagers, stood on parade. He used to come start squeezing your zits on parade. And you weren't allowed to move. And he used to have this saying that, sort of if you get it wrong or, if you move out of line, I'll rip your arm off and beat you over the head with a soggy end, It was one of those sort of situations. It was very humorous but serious at the same time. But, I've made some good friends there. A couple of them came to 50 with me. But it was quite a shock to get away from junior leaders to regular army because the discipline level sort of went from like 10 down to sort of 7 or 6, and you could start like enjoying life a bit better, So, especially where I was posted in BAOR, it was. I loved it really. In Germany, it was brilliant.
So BAOR is that British Army on the Rhine?
British Army of the Rhine, yeah.
So basically, British Army in Germany.
West Germany, it was called then.
Yeah, well, back then it was the Cold War, wasn't it? It was before
it was, yeah,
before the wall came down and everything changed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things were different then. We used to get issued what's called socksmith cards. Do you know about them?
Enlighten us.
Well, what it was the Ruskies at the time, they would have what were called socksmith plates, and they come and try and spy on us. And if you were on the Autobahn and you saw one of these things, they used to have a procedure where you used to lock them in and pull them over, and then call the monkeys then to come and take charge, find out what they're doing, what information they've got, because they were basically spying to see how we were operating and things like that. And especially with 50 being a nuclear regiment, it would attract quite a bit of attention in that area. So you just took it in your stride, really. It was just one of those things. But yeah, so I've lost it now, regrettably, but I used to always carry it around with me. It's like a red and yellow box with socksmiths across it, and it used to sort of give you instructions what to do if you actually came across them.
I won't talk about my service, but let's say I got a friend here called John. Part of John's service was to protect nuclear missiles. It might have been on something that floated. It might have been on a base. It doesn't really matter. But part of John's training was you had to watch these videos about how you went ashore. I'll say went ashore because we were, part of the Navy. And you might be sat in a pub and the guy sat next to you that's being friendly and he's just bought you a beer and he wants to chat. It could be Eric the Red.
Yeah, that's right.
That's actually a Viking name, isn't it? But
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. We used to have videos, be aware and loose lips, sink ships and all that. Yeah. I mean, it was the Cold War, wasn't it?
It was. There was a lot of espionage that went on, and which is why we were instructed with regards to these socksmith plates. If we ever saw them. But yeah, there was a lot of espionage. It was a different world then. It really was a different world from what we're living today, and some things are better, some things are worse. But it was. I enjoyed my time out there, and it was a good crack. I made a lot of good mates. I'm still mates with them now. I met up a couple of weeks ago at a 5-1 battery reunion. A guy called Alan Goddard organises that every year, and we're all getting a bit older. And
I'm trying to think, Spud, because the wall came down in '89, wasn't it? Yeah. If I remember rightly. So all the sort of the popular culture stuff before then was always sort of not always, but often tinted with the fact that we could get the air attack warning.
Yeah.
And we had 4 minutes to get under our beds, as if that would help. I mean, even Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Was it Two Tribes Go to War? And
that's it, yeah.
The video they had, was it Reagan and Yeltsin in the boxing ring? Gorbachev, sorry. Yeah. I knew someone was going to correct me on that. And the air attack warning sounds like, and then it's just another thing, isn't it, in our history that just put us under fear.
Exactly. I mean, the fear was terrible. I mean, I don't know whether you remember, there was 2 films released in the 80s. One of them was called Threads, where Sheffield was hit by a nuclear warhead. Absolutely terrifying, to be honest with you. I mean, I watched it. I was out then, and I thought, gosh. It was. And then there was another one called When the Wind Blows, I think, which was a cartoon about, again, a nuclear attack and an old couple in a house that was suddenly dying from radiation, and it was just terrifying.
An enemy missile attack has been launched against this country. It is estimated that the missiles will arrive in approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
God almighty, Dutch. There's only 3 minutes to go.
Oh dear, I'll just
Stay
get the washing.
indoors.
I mean, the thought of, something like that kicking off was just awful. And there was that constant umbrella of fear over society, that an ICBM had been launched and that'd be the end of the world, basically.
Like it was a cartoon, wasn't it?
It was. And John Mills, I think, did the voiceover in that.
It was like the Snowman, but it was about.
Yeah.
It was that kind of like setup, but it was about nuclear war. Yes. So, how did you? What did you actually? Explain to us how it works. So you join junior leaders, and is that just like homogenous, generic? You join that, and then you go on and join a regiment.
Yeah, you do a year's training, and in some circumstances, some guys joined at 15 prior to me, so they did 2 years there, I think. Excuse me. Then what you do is at the end of your training, they call you a mustering gunner then, and you're basically given a list of regiments that need the recruits, and you have to. I think you had to put 3 down at the time, and I put down. At the time, I was trained as a field gunner on the 25-pounder, which did some live firing on Salisbury Range, and fired a few squash heads at Churchill tanks on there. But and I think I chose. It was either 5 Heavy Regiment. I think it was 3-9. It's over 40 years ago now. I can't.
Don't worry. Just give us a flavour.
Yeah, 3-9 Regiment and 50 Missile, and I was given 50 Missile, and that's where I went. So, and all the rest of the lads, they all went off to their various postings, and some of them had to stay back because, for instance, the regiment that they had. The regiment that they had picked was probably on a campaign at the time, say Northern Ireland or whatever. So they obviously hadn't had the training for that. So they had to stay until the regiment came back to wherever they were based, and then they go off to that regiment. So there was 1 or 2 lads that ended up like that. And then you go on leave, and then next thing you know, you're on a plane, and you're picked up in a Bedford Fortuna and taken to your regiment from Dusseldorf. I think it was Dusseldorf.
Was it the first time you'd been abroad?
No, I'd been abroad before. I did a trip from what was called, when I was at school, from Blackpool to Athens, where we went all the way through Europe when it was Yugoslavia then. And we were. That's when that thing with Turkey and Greece kicked off over Cyprus. I don't know if you remember that. But I was over in Greece at the time, so I was only 14 or 13, and parents were a bit worried about that we might not be able to get home, but it didn't affect us. But
And so, what is the actual remit then of 50th Missile Regiment Royal Artillery?
Well, you've got your AT&T, and you've got your launcher sections, and you've got your survey sections. I was in the survey section, and we basically traverse. We do a land survey on a place that the officer, the route that whichever route it was, he'd go out. He'd put a target peg in the ground, and in that target peg was a 9mm. Like that, with a got firing pin, and what you used to do is sell your survey gear over that, and then you bring in like a high, I think it's something like 14-figure grid reference, and that's where the launcher would go over that target peg and launch its missile wherever it had to go to take out the enemy. So that was it. You'd have a Rupert and a driver. They go off. they'd look where they put the target peg, put a target peg in. We'd come along a survey section, do a traverse of the land, theodolites, directors, PIMS, which was prismatic indicator meridians, which used to find true south. And then that data was then computed and given to the launcher sections. The A&T sections, they used to load onto the launcher. They'd have like a crane and things like this. I don't know too much about it because I was never involved with that side of it. But
is it? Can you just? We're going to have to explain some of these acronyms and stuff here, mate. So I'll ask you in a minute why are officers called Ruperts, which is might sound a bit self-explanatory. It just sounds like an officer name, doesn't it, Rupert? But no, what I'm getting at is, so the UK had their nuclear capability, and on a map they'd always show it as things pointing towards Russia, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but the difference with 50 was it was tactical nuclear. It wasn't into the ICBMs, intercontinental ballistics.
Yes.
I think at the time was Trident, so that was submarine based.
Yes.
So those were the biggies that used to take out cities and stuff like that if it ever kicked off. We were there to as an area weapon, the Lance missile system, which was an American system, which took over from Honest John. And apparently I'd never worked with Honest John, so I don't know, but these were tactical weapons, and they didn't have to be used as a nuke. They could, and you could basically take out a tank division, like I've said, which was why we were sort of a highly prized target, really. From the Soviet side of it, if it ever did kick off.
Yeah, I get it now. So you're like the military tactical, moving stuff around, a counter capability to whatever Russia may or may not be doing on the ground, basically, if they came west into Europe.
Yeah.
As opposed to the big missiles, which were submarine, the Trident, which was submarine based.
Yeah. And that's what we were there for. We were there for just waiting for the bear to come over and attack. And of course, because we were nuclear, we didn't do Op Banner. They wouldn't allow us to go to Ireland because the Americans, I think that they went over. It was before my time. They went over to Ireland, and the Americans kicked off because we were using their systems, and they said, listen, basically if the bear comes over the line, we don't want our tactical nuclear lads in another country. We need them ready all the time. And that's how tense it was, in that we had to be on we had to be ready to go at the drop of the hat, basically, and off into Germany in the middle of nowhere. So,
Spud, how is it then? Because ordinarily, when you're a train rank, you can't wait to put your skills into practice, can you? For me, my first port of call was Belfast,
right? And
you didn't want to miss that. You didn't. That was the. That was the Afghanistan of its day, is what I'm trying to say. You didn't not want to go, but in your case, were the lads kind of fingers crossed that we don't go into action, because if we do, it's going to be the end of civilization as we know it?
I would say that, yeah. I mean, if we were mobilised, then you're talking. I know that there's other artillery regiments that could fire nuclear rounds, but we actually had a nuclear warhead that we could fit, which, and if there's any squaddies out there now listening to this, I can just imagine them all going, I remember I had to do guard duty protecting the nuclear warheads. They hated it. And you were actually armed with live ammunition for that, to basically guard the nuclear warheads. But, yeah, you get a lot of squaddies complaining about that. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as us going into action, I think, once it starts, basically the end of the world. I mean, because if it escalates from tactical to intercontinental, then there's nothing left, is there? I mean, everything's gone. Yeah, I mean, like you're going on about Belfast and stuff like that. You could volunteer to go, and one of my friends from my battery volunteered to go and got blown up out there. So he was only 19 and he's dead now. So that was quite a tragic thing. But that was just after I left, actually, in 1982. But yeah, I mean, towards the end of my 3 years with him, I was getting pretty bored, to be honest. We weren't going anywhere except, strapped to the webbing on a Hercules with a launcher in front of you and air defence on because you can't, because of the noise. I'm sure you've been in a Herc yourself. And they fly us all the way over to the Outer Hebrides. And, we'd do live firing from there. The seas are all clear around there as well. Beautiful seas. And the people, the guards on the gate all used to speak Gaelic. And it was like they were singing to each other, It was a real experience for me as a young lad. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good stuff.
I've taken off in a few Hercs. I've never landed in one, though.
Yeah. Well, I always have this saying,
they had this bad habit of kicking us out when we got up to altitude.
Well, I always have this saying, you get in an aeroplane, it takes you from A to B. Jumping out halfway through, I don't see the point. So, but I get what you're saying, though. Was that on lines, was it? Out of the back?
Yes, that was all static line. Very incredible experience. Were you with them when the wall came down? Were you still with that unit, or is this after your time?
This is after my time. I left. I joined 1978 and left in 81. So, and the wall came down in 89. But because of the time when I joined, and because the equipment that we were using was American, we used to have quite a lot of Vietnam vets with us, which were just, these guys were really traumatized. They just. I mean, I remember one sergeant I was with. He just wandered off on his own into the woods, talking to himself. I was 17 at the time. I didn't know what was going on. And eventually they ended up coming on camp at Northumberland Barracks in Mendon. And, then there was lots of problems with drugs and stuff like that that started to kick off, which hadn't been a problem before. And I remember I went to, I can't remember exactly where it was, because again, it's so long ago. I think it was somewhere like Verl. There was a camp up there, and you go to what was their equivalent of a NAFI, and you just went in, and I mean, it was just it was weed everywhere and drugs, and I mean, I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. But I think a lot of it was a lot of guys that were, because it's only 3 years after it finished when I joined, so. I think a lot of the guys there were still traumatized from the Vietnam War. So, and it is, I mean, I have heard that, a lot of them got through it by taking drugs because it was the only way that they could sort of stay on a level. And yet when they got out, a lot of the guys just totally finished with drugs. They would take heroin and things like this. But once they'd left the theatre of war, they basically stopped that. But obviously, not all of them did. But I just remember.
Oh, well, it was a big problem, wasn't it? Service personnel returning to the States, and they'd what had started out as a bit of escapism over there, it become a problem. And if you think of the trauma a lot of people would have been dealing with, it would have just compounded it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I always thought it's strange that the British Milner didn't go over there, but I remember somebody mentioned something to do with I can't remember his name now. Was it Harold? He was a Labour.
Harold Wilson? No.
Harold Wilson, I think that was it. Yeah, and they said he was sort of, because he was quite pally with, politics in Soviet Union. That's why the British military were kept out of Vietnam, because the Australians went, didn't they? So I could be wrong on a few of these things, but I'm just going back to what I remember.
Spud, we had a chap on the podcast, very, very wonderful gentleman. He was called Alan Cutter. He was Black Ops in Vietnam. So he was in naval intelligence, and his role over there was all clandestine stuff, and he used to have to recruit teams, often with local people, and they would, they'd go into villages and gather intel and all this kind of stuff. And at one point, and Alan says this in our podcast, Alan Cutter, folks, if you want to find it in our list, or just type in Vietnam. He at one point he realized he was going to have to kill all his team, because if he didn't take them out, they were going to frag him, which was a big thing over there.
Right.
And it was something like he gathered them together for a meeting. I think it was in a tent, but I'm guessing it was. And he went, once they were gathered together, he just rolled a grenade in, and that was it. He took them all out, and it's beyond belief, isn't it? What
it is, yeah.
Some people in this world go through, and that you've then got to get home and pick up your life and carry on, like, not just as if nothing's happened, but no one else is really interested in your war stories, are they? No,
not. Well, you wouldn't want to talk about stuff like that, would you, to anybody? I mean, it's I've never heard of that, but that's dreadful.
Yeah, they're a friendly old bunch, the Yanks, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
They love the British forces.
Yeah, they were so much better equipped than us. I remember at one particular, my fate, it was Boots DMS when I was in, which was basically compressed cardboard. They're useless, and a lot of the Falklands guys will tell you just how useless they were. But once they got wet feet, that was it. Trench foot. But one thing I noticed was that the Americans had like a huge sort of overboot that would go over their assault boots. So if they're in a trench or anywhere wet, they keep the feet dry. And I had a bit of a light bulb moment then. I thought, my kit's pretty crap compared to what these guys have got. And they were much better supplied, I think, than we were. But it was. At least they're gone now, aren't they?
Yes, we had both when I was in training. There was we called it the commando boot. I think that's the one that you mentioned. And then we had what's it called? The direct molded sole. I think that's the DMS one. Direct being it's attached to the boot by this big, thick sort of glue or sealant. And things have come on no end since then. And when you look back and you see what the guys had to go through in the Falklands, standing in trenches up to their knees, you can see that feet is it's more important than equally as important as to what rounds you're carrying and what ordnance you've got. And it was heavily overlooked in the Falklands.
Yes. I got out in September before the march when the Falklands had kicked off, but sort of stories I heard coming back were that some of the British lads were taking the boots off the Argentinians, because the ones that were dead, obviously, but they were using their kit because their feet were so bad. I was sort of speaking to a medic who said that you know, trench foot put more soldiers in hospital than bullets did. And I think it took the British military a long time to realise just how important it is to keep your feet dry. I mean, I had it. I forget, one of my sergeant majors nicked. I don't know whether you had them, but there was like these green tins of foot powder, and he sort of said, "Taylor, where have you got that from?" I said, "Well, I was supplied it, sir." But he said, "Give it here." He took it off me, and I never saw it again. So it's.
We used to call, if I remember rightly, in naval slang, that's called foo-foo powder. Don't ask me why. Yes. Spud, so moving on from the military stuff, you've got some experience of the subject of narcissistic abuse, which is I tell you what, if you look at videos about that on YouTube, it's a really popular subject, or certainly the gaining an understanding of it. Understanding of it is popular. How did this pique your interest? Have you experienced it yourself?
Yeah. I'm 4 years out of it now, and I have to say that it is the worst experience I've ever had in my life, to be honest. It nearly killed me, to be honest. I was I ended up in rehab, drinking out of control, and it took a while to find out. I mean, I'm only now 4 years on, sort of getting some semblance of normality in my life, and a lot of that is it's down to a guy called H.G. Tudor. Now H.G. Tudor is a narcissistic psychopath, extremely intelligent guy, and he runs a YouTube channel called Knowing the Narcissist, and I've personally consulted with him on several occasions over the phone. He keeps his identity secret for obvious reasons, and H.G. Tudor is a pseudonym. But because he is one,
is he?
He is a narcissist psychopath, and that's a medical diagnosis that he's had. And his information is unrivaled. You won't find information anywhere.
I've heard about this. I'm not sure if it's this exact chap, but I've heard about people that have the ability to, despite the fact it's a personality disorder, sociopathic or some sort of psychopathy, people have the ability to see it for what it is and explain it to other people.
But the difference with H.G. Tudor is because he knows what he is. He's an extremely intelligent guy. Because he knows what he is, he can tell you why they behave in such a way. Our kind, as he says. And that guy's information just basically just, I don't know what to say, really. I don't know.
Well, can we let's start with your own experience. So I'm guessing you were in a relationship, were you, with someone who?
It wasn't a relationship as such. It was. I don't want to mention any names.
No problem.
And the one that I was dealing with was more of a work-based thing. They were what H.G. Tudor would call a mid-range somatic type B. You've got certain categories of narcissists. You've got your letters, your mid-rangers, your greaters. H.G. Tudor calls himself an ultra. But anyway, with the letters, these are the people that bulldoze their way through life, and have very sort of outgoing type of behaviours, very braggarts and things like this. And basically, just like I say, they just demolish their way through life. Again, you've got upper lesser type A and B in that category. And normally you'll find the upper lessers are quite successful in business because of the main thing with narcissism is the lack of empathy. I mean, this whole thing that we're going through in the world right now is not. It's basically narcissistic. It's all about control, and there's no empathy for for people. Then you get the mid-rangers, which are, you see people go, oh, my narcissist was a covert narcissist, or mine was an outgoing. I can't remember the word for it now. There's no such thing as a covert narcissist. Narcissists are categorized into the three schools with certain cadres, and all narcissists have malign behaviors. They have covert behaviors. They have, sort of. So I can't remember the word. It's really frustrating me now. Where they're braggarts. They're, I'm brilliant and I do this. And again, within those, with the mid-ranger I was dealing with, she was a middle mid-range somatic type B. And the type Bs are crybabies. They're basically, it's everybody else's fault, and they're always bursting into tears. And, when I described my situation to HG Tudor, I mean, the information he came back was just so bang on. I mean, I was astounded at how accurate it was. And with his help, I've managed to arm myself. I have a T-shirt, actually, another one, which says "Weaponized Empath Courtesy of HG Tudor." And, I've got a narc detector going on all the time. And as soon as I see it, I disengage and move on. It's one of the most dangerous situations you can get yourself in. The amount of damage that was done by them, you end up in a place of codependency. You become trauma bonded, which is like Stockholm syndrome, and you basically lose your sense of self. Your sense of identity of who you are. You become cognitively dissonant. So your belief systems are attacked, and you can't understand why you're thinking that way. But it's just such a dreadful experience to go through. And the cycle of narcissistic abuse is validation, or love bombing, as some people call it, in the romantic side of it. So you get the validation, then you get the devaluation, where they start to devalue who you are, and then you get what's called the discard, or the disengagement, where they just throw you away like a piece of shit, if I'm allowed to say that. Yeah, and then normally they come back and hoover you back in again. It's all about the four things that narcissists want, which is fuel, control, tertiary benefits, and what's the other one? I can't think of it. But these are the four prime aims of what narcissists want, and two of the strongest ones, obviously, character traits. That's it. So you've got fuel, control, character traits, tertiary benefits. Tertiary benefits are you provide them with a home or a car or whatever, and the character traits are they take part of your empathic nature. And when you see a narcissist, what you're seeing is a person that's covered in mirrored shards of all the people they've abused. And each of those mirrored shards is reflected back at you as a character trait, which they've picked up. And that's used against you to draw you in. And once they got the control over you after the validation stage, then that's when the real abuse starts to kick in. And it's a very deep subject, but if anybody is dealing with it, I would strongly recommend HG Tudor to anybody because his knowledge is unrivaled.
Without compromising yourself, Spud, or anyone else, what can you give us an example of how this started and what sort of stuff you were subjected to? Because I think if people out there can hear it, they might go, do you know what? I'm actually going through a similar thing myself, and it's incredibly damaging. I think the gaslighting aspect is something we all need to be be aware of. But can you give us an idea how? I'm just thinking that people at home might not have any clue what a narcissist is, why it's important to be able to recognise this personality disorder and the damage it can inflict.
Yeah. Well, you get the red flags where, for instance, you are validated and put on a pedestal, and a red flag is, let's say, for instance, let's say it's a romantic setting. What you'll get is you'll go out for a night and then you'll get hundreds of texts the next day. Oh, it's wonderful. When can we do this again? I thought you were wonderful. And basically, that's not normal, really. So some of the signs that you're dealing with narcissism is one of the most used ones is the silent treatments, where they basically just cut you off and don't talk to you. That you could send them a text and they'll just ignore it. And what they're doing is they're establishing control over you, and it puts you in a place, especially if you've got empathic nature, because empaths are in a way addicted to narcissists, and narcissists are addicted to empaths because empaths are their favorite food. Basically, is the only way I can put it. Normal people that it doesn't normally happen with. So a thing to look out for is that incredible validation at the beginning, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in a romantic setting, or sometimes you grow up with it. My own father is in that category. I don't want to talk too much about it because he's not so good now, but and then once you're drawn in, then you start. That's when the abusive behaviour starts. Now that abuse is the devaluation. Let's just say, for instance, as an example, one example I know of is that she would say, she'd say to her husband who's losing his hair, didn't realise you'd lost that much hair. It's a devaluation of who he is. And it's snidey, covert patterns of behaviour like that. The girl might say to you, "Bit of weight on recently, haven't you?" And it's attacking your self-esteem. So, and this is coming after a period of great validation where they treat you like you're the bee's knees, and then the devaluation starts. And then, silent treatments, they won't speak to you for, weeks on end. And then suddenly they'll come back and start talking to you again. And, in my particular situation, I was just basically used because they wanted to get to somebody else and I was his best friend. And I was used in that situation to get information, which I see now, but I didn't see at the time. And then, they go into what's called a narcissistic rage if you win them, where you just cast aside like a piece of garbage. And it's like, as H.G. Tudor says, you basically deleted. And you're left with all this trauma they get to you at a level that destroys who you are. And this is why it's so bad when people suffer it. It's dreadful. And they sow into you what is a thing called ever-presence. So let's just say, some examples from HG says, he'd have a favourite song with his girlfriend, and he'd always wear this scent, or he'd always sit in this chair here. And so once they're gone, and there's no, suddenly you're left with it, you smell it, and it brings back all this memory and trauma. And you look at the chair and you go, oh, and it's like, all the good things that they sowed into your life, which you thought were good at the time, they're ever present around you, which is why you'd have to go through a process called, HG calls it exorcism. I bought his book on it. And you get rid of everything. Photographs, any gifts they give you, just get rid of the lot. Change the furniture, change the wallpaper, and just get rid of it, because it's been purposely done to keep you softened, to draw you back in a Hoover. And because they always come back at some point. It might be 20 years down the line. It could be 2 weeks. I mean, I've never heard from mine since. So it's coming up to 4 years, thankfully. I don't want to hear from them. So yeah, there's all I would say is if people are curious about it, is to watch HG Tudor's videos, because they will tell you exactly what's going on, and you will be able to find out for yourself. He does what's called narc detectors, where you write in about what's going on with who you believe to be a narcissist, and he will tell you, obviously you have to pay for it, but he will tell you whether or not you are dealing with somebody that's a narcissist, and he'll categorize them for you, because the lessers and the mid-rangers are unaware of what they are. The greater narcissists are calculating. They know that they're narcissists, and they calculate everything, whereas the lessers and the mid-rangers do everything from an unconscious level. And
it's like they're feeding off your power. Is it? In very friends at home, I always feel a bit bad talking about this sort of thing with respect to the fact that it's a personality disorder. And the thing is, so as such, it's a mental health condition.
Yeah.
And whereas if, we're getting to a point in society now where we're starting to realize when people battle addiction, like myself, it's a mental health condition. It's something that we're dealing with, and very often it's out of our hands because the psychological programming is so strong through life experience, through learned experience, etc. Very often it's almost impossible just to bloody say no to, and people are getting that. And in that situation, even though you still see disgusting language towards people that have battled things like addiction, one of my bugbears, I fucking hate the word clean,
Yeah.
It's so outdated, and people use it as, clean should be the new N-word, right? Because no one's got a right to refer to anyone as being dirty, essentially. And it's certainly not for a mental health condition. You can kind of explain this sort of stuff to people, and even if they're, a bit bullshit or whatever, they kind of can get their heads around it. And it's the same thing with narcissists. Is that whichever way, at the end of the day, this is still a person that is, I wouldn't say suffering, because they don't seem to suffer, but they are experiencing a mental health condition. It's a
cluster B disorder.
But the thing is, because they've created such damage in other people with with this manipulative schema, this mind frame, and they hurt people so badly, that it really has become a kind of thing to refer to them as them and they will do and did. And I get it. I mean, Spud, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to in any way pull the rug out from under people's feet who've been through this, because I've kind of been through it a bit, but I'm a bit bloody minded. And when people fuck with me, that's it. Sorry, you've had your chat. You get it a lot in as a podcast, though. So you see comments and you just see people gaslighting you. and I'm an old bastard now, so I just see it for what it is, and you know, I feel for that. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent.
It is, yeah.
It's becoming more and more prevalent. But
what you've got to remember, though, Chris, in some of these situations is they're aware of the abuse that they're doing, and I mean, one of the worst things I think about it is what's called, if you look at the fuel, is they know that once they've discarded you, they know that you're suffering, and it gives them fuel. Or some people call it supply, which is not really the right word, and they get what's called thought fuel they think that person's really suffering now, and they know that you're suffering, and it makes them feel important, because as a narcissist, they're dead inside. There's nothing in there except this creature that's crawling around within this vacuous void that's within them, where there's no identity, which is why they have to get character traits from people. I mean, look, I'm no hero, right? I did my time in the army and all that. I didn't see any action as anything or anything like that. But one thing that narcissists do, and I'll get to why I've mentioned just that then, is they create a situation within you which is called CPTSD, and it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And what happens is, because you're so emotionally shattered and your sense of self is shattered, this is where you see you start getting substance abuse. And with me, it was alcohol. And it was the only way I could get through it, because I didn't understand what was going on. And I was at Catterick Garrison in the summer of 2020. And I got a flashback to, I don't know, 1979, something like that. And I got all those feelings back of when I was 18. I thought, and then it went, and I thought, well, what's all that about? I thought it was strange at the time. But the next time I went, I actually had, and I've not suffered with, any sort of serious trauma when I was in the army, but I had an actual PTSD event. Some people may say it was just a panic attack, but why I say that was because I went back in time 40 years, and I was actually back in 1978, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on here? And I couldn't breathe, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't talk, and I just collapsed. And what I found out later is that CPTSD triggers PTSD events in your life. And I was just sort of thrown back 40 years to something that happened that I didn't particularly like. But the fact of the matter was that it's like it stepped into a time machine and gone back 40 years. And I'm like, and everything was around me was 40 years old. And I just, like I said, I just couldn't talk, swallow, I couldn't walk. I just bang on the floor, And I've never experienced that. And I've been out 40 years, I don't know what it was. It might not have been PTSD. I don't know. Because like I say, I mean, I'm no hero. I've not been, in the front line in Afghanistan or Iraq or anything. So, but what I'm trying to do is he's trying to link that narcissism can, once CPTSD gets inside you, which stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is it's like a whole sort of panorama of micro traumas that you've gone through while you've been suffering for 4 years, like I was. But it triggers stuff inside you that you didn't like, and that's what happened to me anyway. And thankfully, I've never. I went to the doctors, and I said I just haven't got a clue what's happened to me. And they said, well, are you ex-military? I said, yeah. So they fast-tracked me through to started doing all this flipping EMDR stuff and whatever. And, I started to get better. But the best thing you can do, really, if you want to get over it, is learn about it. Learn it, and learn it from the best, which, in my opinion, is H.G. Tudor. You can go there's a lot of rubbish out there. Overt was the word I was after before. People go, oh, he's an overt narcissist. Well, no, he isn't. he's probably a lesser narcissist with overt behaviours, and he's a malignant narcissist. Well, no, there's no such thing. All narcissists have malign behaviours, and it's I don't know why life, the universe, whatever you want to put it, put me through that situation. But boy, have I learned some big lessons through it, and it ain't happening again. I'll tell you that for sure. So.
Yes, Spud, I get it. I should just point out there, because this is one of the things I try to highlight a lot, is we shouldn't just think that PTSD is something that military people experience having been in, for example, combat. It's way, way more often linked to childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Which can then be compounded by your experiences in the military. And of course, there's no research done in this area, because what I call the psychopaths that control everything, they don't want people to look into this area, because they want fuel for their, they want cannon fodder for their war machine. They don't want to look at the fact that a lot of people that join the military come from quite damaged backgrounds, that they found a home for themselves in the military, or they was escaping. I mean, I when I joined the Marines, I was living in my car. Right.
Wow.
I was 17 years old and living in a Renault 12. That was my second experience of being. My first experience was I was 15 in my school uniform, sleeping in a phone box, or at least for one night. And it'd be so easy for me to say, it's all like what happened to me in the military, but the truth was, we saw some serious stuff. We certainly did in Northern Ireland, and I'll be honest, without trying to sound like a psycho myself, I didn't bat an eyelid, Spud.
Right.
Because, no disrespect, we was all grown people, and we signed on the dotted line, and we knew that we knew we could lose people. We knew people could get hurt. I can deal with that, right?
Yeah.
The difference is, as an adult, you have the ability to rationalize things and compartmentalize and put things in their place and make sense of it, using adult rationale. When you're a toddler and you go through horrendous experiences, I'm not talking about just me now, but the wide range could be mental abuse, could be physical abuse, could be sexual abuse. The thing is, as a toddler, we don't have the ability to make sense of it, because we don't have the cognition. And so if, say, let's just take, let's just take an example. So say, an adult is beating up on a child and knocking them senseless. What the child does is they can't make sense of it. So they just think, it must be something about me. I must be like a bad person, or I'm doing something wrong again, Dad, aren't I? Or it might be a teacher at school. Sorry, sir. And the toddler, that gets buried then. And it gets buried in a place where you never can then make sense. I mean, you can later on make sense of it, but it's still there. It's a very deep programming.
Yes.
But not wanting to go. I just feel duty bound to say this, because a part of the ruling elite, these psychos, whoever they are, is they've part of their remit is to get people to hero worship soldiers. And they very cleverly got this PTSD thing down to like, you must have been a tough guy in a battle and you've seen things that people should never see. And that can be true. But like I say, as an adult in battle, it's not nice, but you have an adult rationality to come and make sense that you don't have that with childhood trauma. And this is just something that's never discussed in academic terms, and it needs to be. It needs to be. We need to look at why is it a significant percentage of people that join the military have had these adverse childhood experiences. But putting that to one side, what was I going to say? This is the feeling I get, is in the olden days, in the sort of medieval period, or where we lived in communities. I mean, real communities, not what we live in now, where you can live next door to a next door neighbor for 20 years and never say hello.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
But in the olden days, when you lived in that tight knit community, say in a village in the middle of a forest, like the old Robin Hood kind of times or whatever, I think when people suffered this narcissistic trait, they would be called out as being witches.
Yeah.
Or the male counterpart. I don't know if that's a wizard or what, and because people would realize that these individuals are using like a magic, they're casting this spell over other people. And back then you'd be banished from the village. So it's like, oi, you'd either be, maybe you'd be earned at the stake, right? Or you'd be right, pack your bags, off you go. Little bit like anyone who's seen the film Highlander, when he recovers from his wounds and no one can believe it. So they say, oi, banish him.
Yeah.
The thing we've got now, Spud, and I think you'll relate to this, is because we don't live in that village anymore. We live in like a global village with a lot of stuff done online, or people's only interaction with you is like in the workplace. I think it's allowed this mental health disorder to flourish.
Yeah.
And it's allowed people to get into positions of power, protected by all the kind of health and safety stuff. And, you can't bully people. You can't say this to your boss. Whoa, hang on. How many bosses are actually probably real narcissists? And, and I was subject to one. It had to be pointed out to me. I didn't realize. He went, Chris, he was next on your radar, mate. What he was doing with me was gaslighting me and making me like the hero of the workplace.
Right.
In order to then, well, there's lots of things then, isn't there? There's lots of implications there that you can then put other people down, because it's like, well, look at what Chris is doing and da-da-da-da-da. But yeah, I really do think that the modern workplace it allows people with personality disorders to flourish.
Yeah.
Because there's no challenge to them. They sneak their way up through the ladder by being manipulative and going behind people's backs and playing people off and, smiling to your face when like literally they've just gone and put a report in about you to the yeah. And then when they get on the rungs of the ladder, then they get the power, and then it becomes a different thing, because people below them are then afraid to criticize, because like, that's my boss.
Yeah.
Can I really be saying that my boss is a fucking psychopath, or that, I really feel uncomfortable in their presence, and, they make me feel, I don't know, maybe if you're a woman, you've got this creepy guy that just don't make you feel. And I think this is what we're seeing. I think this is why we're seeing this trait allowed to flourish, Spud.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've mentioned in lots of scenarios where I say that there is a rise in narcissism across the whole world, and we're seeing it in the current situation that we're in, where there is this race for control to control people and whole nations, and it is a worrying trend, and there's a great evil over the whole planet right now, and it is basically narcissism. This is why you're seeing so many people talking about it and, trying to sort of make some sort of sense of it. But if you think about the 4 prime aims, which is control, fuel, character traits, and tertiary benefits, if you think about those 4 things, look at some of the agendas that are going off right now. CBDCs. I mean, that's control.
Yes, but sorry, friends, we just took a little break there. Yeah, that brings us on nicely to the last 2 years of debacle, or 2.5 years now. Yeah. Because when you start to look at world leaders, and I'm just going to call a few out now, or so-called world, or you've got the likes there of, is it Jacinda Ardern?
Oh gosh,
Prime Minister of New Zealand. Obviously, we got our classic Tony Blair, Matt Hancock now, who's been a lot in the press recently. They call him Dazzlan Matt. I'm picking my words carefully here. I'm blanking out my own words. And what you see when you understand it is you're seeing what we talked about. You're seeing these whether they're narcissistic traits or whether they're just basic psychopathic traits. You're seeing these individuals that are playing people, and it might not even be as deep as that. When I look at, say, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, what I'm seeing there is somebody who's been so lacking in love and self-love and self-esteem, etc., through birthright and early interactions and beyond. They suddenly get in this position where they find themselves in the limelight and they fucking love it.
Yeah.
And they is going to do anything to stay there. You put a paper in front of them, they're going to sign their name. They are going to put their, if the World Economic Forum wants them to come and, oh my gosh, look how important I am now. And it's crazy. We're in a situation where our leaders that back in the day, going back to when we lived in tribes and the like, or indigenous Americans, your leader was there to protect you, to do what was best for you, to fight for your rights. And he would listen to every member of the tribe and take all those viewpoints on board before making a decision that ultimately was in the best interests of everyone's well-being and everyone's future. And now we see this situation where people are ascribed to this new world order, this crazy cult, which puts them in these positions, and it will hold them in these positions as long as they keep playing the game. And it will give them the badges and the trinkets and the OBEs and the this and the that. And these individuals thrive on it. They are literally wallowing in their own self-glory, as opposed to the reality, which is, no, you're just screwing everyone over. Yeah. Does this tie in with what we're saying, Spud, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more so with Western society. What we've done is we've detached ourselves from what life should be like, where, we live in communities, we grow our own food, we interact with one another, and trade with one another. What's happened is that's been slowly pushed away, and we've become more state dependent. And this has been done on purpose, which is why some of the things that really worry the WEF is things like homesteads, as the Americans call it, where a family is self-sufficient. It grows its own fruit and veg. It raises its own livestock for meat and things like this. If you look that way out, you want to eat meat. I do. I'm not a vegetarian. And you live in a commune, and it's how life should be. But what's happening is we've surrendered that through through all sorts of processes like school and other things. And we've basically lost our autonomy, which is why I've personally taken steps to detach from the dependency on the state. Obviously, we've got spiraling inflation and things like this. Any fiat currencies that you've got are, just devaluing every single day. And I would say to people, if you've got savings, get it out of the banks and put it into precious metals. And there's lots of different ways where you can buy precious metals where they keep and store it for you, and that belongs to you. Or there's lots of different ways you can go about it. But what you need to do is get out of this system, because eventually, they're trying to phase cash out, which is why I always encourage people to pay cash for everything. And there are some businesses that will, say cash only, no card. And, if it's a card only, then boycott that business. Don't use self-checkouts at Tesco, because you're putting people out of work for a start, and it's card only. Join the queue and pay cash. But yeah, we've lost our sense. I mean, this country in medieval times, there was villages, and you would interact with other villages. Still got that kind of structure in Norfolk. It's virtually unchanged since medieval times. But you've got villages where people looked after each other and took care of people's needs. And we've lost all that. It's like you said earlier. You can live next door to a neighbour and not talk to them for 20 years. It's madness, and it's all part of this big to lock everybody down and control everybody, and bring us into a controlled CCP state, basically. Facial recognition. You can't spend that money out 5 miles outside an area of where you live. Controlled car, electric cars. So it switches off once you go outside a certain area. It's madness. I mean, what's happening in Oxford? They put. Are you aware of Oxford? What they're doing there?
Is this where they ban people from driving to the next county or something? Yeah.
Yeah, they've split the city. I think it's into 4 zones, and you're not allowed out of these zones, and you get fined if you go out of these zones. It's just total madness. I appreciate they have traffic problems, but that's not the way to go about it. There's a different agenda behind it, in my opinion.
Spud, let's talk about that, because it's an important thing. Veterans make up a big percentage of our society. I heard a figure saying there's 6 million veterans in the UK. I'm not sure if that includes blue light services or whatever, but regardless, it's still a big figure. And when you think that we all swore an oath that, okay, I know it was about the Queen and the royal family and all this sort of stuff, but essentially, what were we really swearing? We were swearing to the fact that we was going to be the good guys, weren't we? And we were going to defend against evil.
Yeah.
And we were going to protect the kids at all costs.
Yeah.
And yet what we've seen through this last 2.5 years, which it's gosh, it must be hard to go through it and not see some red flag that makes you go, hang on here, something's not quite. So I'm interested to know, what was it that woke you up to, not necessarily the last couple of years, but at what point in your life did you think, hang on a sec, this narrative ain't right?
No.
Yeah.
Right. It's difficult for me to, because I don't want to bring any religion into this, right? But Uh, I have a, let's just say I have a belief system, and without wanting to go into, all the ins and outs of that, I've seen this coming for decades. Except I didn't think it had happened in my lifetime, but it has. Now, if you read Revelation 13, I think I said it before to you that, all men, great and small, rich and poor, will not be able to buy or sell unless they have the mark. We already know that they have got laser imprinted tattoos, on the back of your hand or your forehead or whatever. And without that mark, you won't be able to buy or sell. So I've seen this coming for a long time. And it's just that it's been below the radar. And like I said, I didn't think it had come in my lifetime. But what we're seeing now is what I would call the rise of the beast system. And this world we're living in right now is paving the way for Antichrist. It's the only way I can put it. I can't not deny. I can't, this is how I see life. I'm not saying, this is how it is. I'm not trying to put my belief systems into anybody, but this is how I see it. I just feel that the days we're living in are the last days that have been spoken about throughout the New Testament. And this, Mr. Schwab's agenda is all about bringing in, this.
Well, it's dark, mate, isn't it?
It's evil. It's pure evil.
It's a very dark agenda. Even if you don't want to bring religion into it, it's a dark agenda.
Yeah.
There's so many red flags with it. The fact that they completely buy into the last 2 years without any research or question shows you that they're not interested in rationality or science, except they're going for this one.
But I think what happened when Donald Trump was elected, because I'm not saying, I'm not saying Donald Trump's right, but Hillary Clinton should have won that election. And she paid millions to the Dominion machines to make sure that she won. And it was such a shock when Trump won. And I think what happened is it just tipped the scale. And what it's done is it's made the deep state cabal. They've now had to enforce and quicken their agenda, which, is people are waking up to it. But I think it was kind of a tripping point, because all this should have been coming in slowly, so people don't notice. But the trouble is they've had their agenda pushed forward where they've got to bring it in as fast as they can. Within the next, what we're looking at now, probably 4 years, you can expect to see, all in my opinion, but you can expect to see tens of millions of people gone that shouldn't have gone due to certain procedures. And it's, like I said earlier, there's a great evil over the entire world, and there's nowhere to run to. There's no way you can go and get asylum, so you've got to fight it on your own doorstep. And my advice in this respect is to become autonomous. There's lots of ways you can do that. Unfortunately, I'm under non-disclosure agreements where I can't talk about it. But if you do some research into becoming autonomous, you can detach yourself from government and from state. A good guy to listen to is a guy called David Alderman as well, who's the People's Lawyer UK. There's one in America as well called the People's Lawyer, but for people in Britain, he will take you through certain procedures. There's only one law, and it's do no harm. Everything else is bullshit. It's acts of parliament played out by actors. So you get that speeding ticket that comes through your front door. You're right in the bottom right-hand corner at 45 degrees in blue ink, and you basically say, offer to contract declined, respectfully declined, and you just send it back. Because everything we live in is maritime law. It's law of the sea. And it's been purposely done this way through the Phoenicians years ago. And after the fire of 1666 in London, people were declared dead, lost at sea, if they couldn't find them within 7 years. And that happens to us as once, basically. I mentioned I don't know what I'm allowed to mention here, so but basically you're dead lost at sea. And the schooling system, teachers standing over you, where's your homework? You're going, oh, sorry, sir, So next thing you know, you're getting that ingrained into your system. So that when the copper comes in and starts saying, do you understand what I'm telling you? And you're under arrest. You jump, yeah, okay. Where it's legalese for, do you stand under my authority? And you go, no, I don't understand. There's nothing, unless you've hurt somebody, stolen from them, caused a breach of the peace, GBH murder, whatever. That comes under common law. You'll notice that police will charge you under common law for murder, but they're going to charge you for speeding. It's under the Highways Act 1945 or whatever it is. Do you understand? No, I don't understand. I don't comply. I don't consent to it. This is stuff that you've got to look into, research. So
does it work though, Spud? Because we saw a lot of this during the last couple of years. We saw people ending up in court, and let's just say they might have been charged with attending a protest.
Yeah.
And they'd probably put it under breach of the peace or something, wouldn't they? And you saw people putting up the common law defense.
Yeah.
And there was one judge that said, I'm going to paraphrase here now because I'm sure he didn't swear, but, oh, for fuck's sake, I've got another one in front of me. What is this bullshit? No, and they ride roughshod over your common law.
Here's some stuff I can share with you. Okay, first of all, you can see that's shiny far away from it.
Common law chart.
Right, record.
Common law court, sorry.
Record, not register, because register is surrendering your sovereignty, Regis. Record your birth with the common law court. Okay? Then get yourself one of these, which is, I don't know if you can see that, but it's Common Law Court of Great Britain. And basically, you're identifying as a living man or woman, flesh, blood, and spirit. If you're in court, all our court systems here are satanic, which is why everybody wears black. As long as you're not up for murder or thieving or causing people harm, and a magistrate says to you, Michael Allen Taylor, what you do is you respond back and you say, well, are you addressing the corporation or the living man of flesh, blood, and spirit? And they can't do it unless you give them joinder. Now, with that approach to the court, they can swear all they want. And if they do drag you out and take you against your will, that's actually assault and kidnapping and battery and imprisonment, false imprisonment. But that's the best way to kick it, to start they've got it in front of them. It's all in block capitals, because that's the way it works. And you go, are you, my name Christopher Thrall? Well, are you addressing the corporation or are you addressing the living man of flesh, blood, and spirit? And you're quite entitled to say that. One woman in Canada, which I learned about, was where she just kept saying, "You're not addressing me properly." And the judge in that instance was going, "Well, are you X, Y, and Z?" And she said, "You're not addressing me properly." And eventually he just threw it out because he couldn't get past the fact that he was dealing. The courts are a corporation, and they can only deal with you as a corporation, which is where, you know, all this birth certificate stuff comes in. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it'll work in every instance, but you're quite within your rights to do that, especially if you've only been charged with an act of parliament or something stupid. As long as you're not caused any harm, you can say that you're addressing the corporation, which is your birth certificate, which is a piece of paper, which is traded all over the world, and you're worth a fortune. And you can get it back, by the way. Your birthright trust I'm talking about. And they can ignore it, but what they're doing is illegal. And you know, I've lost the train of thought. I've gone off on one here because it's really passionate about it. So
yeah, but it's quite a deep subject, and I've certainly looked into it. I've been on a common law training. There seems to be a bit of, I think it's fair to say, disjointedness in the whole approach to it, but the whole freedom movement is disjointed. So many people have got various different ideas of what's going on, how to approach it, etc., etc. Do you think the controllers have overplayed their hand then by pushing, because it's backfired spectacularly, but it's backfired for people like you and me, Spud, because we're aware of alternative media and we don't go on the mainstream, and we get our information from, you know, people that wish us well as opposed to people that wish us harm. But it should be remembered that if we was to have this conversation, say, I don't know, I'm thinking of a certain person, let's just call him John. He would have no clue what we were talking about. Yeah. He watches his songs of praise on a Sunday religiously, and he does his ironing, and following that there's a wonderful BBC Nature docu. Like, how could these people do you any harm? Look at it. Look there. And he goes to vote every year because that's very important to him. And of course he goes for the old Scooby Dooby when the doctors, you know, send him a text. He literally, and in one case we had a chat with John, and we explained to him, look, you're getting on a bit. You shouldn't really be putting shit into your body. You know, you're on a good wicket here. Why do you want to? And you think you're making a breakthrough there, and you think that John understands you, and then what happens is you have a chat with John the next day. He's like, yeah, I just been to my GP's. Yeah, I had the old, you know, the fee. It's all good for you, isn't it? You know, you got to get your 1, your 2, your 3, and a couple of the old, you know, rooster-roonies. You've got to. And what I'm saying is that, like, I'm not bothered about trying to convert John, right?
Yeah.
You know, John's a sinking ship, like so many people.
Yeah.
But the point I'm highlighting, Spud, is how these controllers, they work on the masses, don't they? That sadly, even though that their plan has spectacularly backfired this last couple of years, they work on the majority that do watch their mainstream media news, that do believe every single word of it, that you know, if you start talking about, I don't know, things like Azalan and stuff that went on in Kent, they just got no idea about that, because they they don't watch alternative stuff like you and I do, and all the wonderful people who I know are watching now. They've only got their BBC. And I'm not really going anywhere with this. I'm just highlighting the point that is incredulous to people like you and I, and like I say, the vast majority, I'm sure, of people watching, the incredulousness that they're still pushing forward with this agenda. It's a monkey old baloney this week. It's a chicken one. It's are they going to continue forward because they've got that mass consensus?
Well, I've always said this. If I am utterly astounded at the gullibility of the general populace on this. I got, my next door neighbours over here, standing out banging plates, not shouting gas, 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 by the way. but they're going, they're just clapping and woo. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you people? I cannot see it for the strike that it is. You're being had. And I'm astounded at the gullibility of it. I mean, let's just, I can't go there because you'll get zapped by YouTube. But, certain things disappear that, when we look at the last 2.5 years we've gone through, certain things that happen every year suddenly gone. Illness wise, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and the ONS says, well, it's this, that, the other. And it's all down to the Scooby-Doo, as you call it. But honestly, I mean, I say to people, just scratch a little scratch on the top and just peel off that layer and look, and it's wide open in front of you. You don't have to dig that deep to find out about what's going on. But I don't think people want to know. And I understand that because it's pretty terrifying what's coming if they get their own way, which I don't think they will personally. I think there's enough people like you and me that are kicking back at this. And people are waking up. They're suddenly seeing, but Uncle John was fine until then,
Yes. Yes.
And, it's, I mean, look at the fact that we can't even openly talk about it. It's just, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Censorship. It just makes me angry. I can go off on one. I'm not going to.
Listen, Spud, you said enough, mate, because it's been an absolutely wonderful chat.
Thank you.
And I think I think these chats help people out there that are kind of like on the fringe or perhaps like wallowing in the marshland, realizing that, and our message to them, and I know I speak for both of us here, is like, come on, veterans, like you swore an oath, okay?
Yeah.
Our forebears gave their lives for our freedom.
Yeah.
Huge sacrifices, not and not just talking the military here, but the civilians, like during like the Blitz, etc., and it's okay to question the narrative, because history has shown if we don't, and we don't keep our our radar up, then tyranny will step in, and many outside observers would say that is exactly what is happening. So on that note, brother, just massive thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Spud,
thank you.
You're always welcome back on the show again. It's been fascinating to hear about the 50th Missile Regiment, of which I had no clue about. It's great to chat to an awake veteran.
Yeah.
And
right. Thank you.
And to our friends out there, if you could like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. Click the notification bell, because we're going to have lots more of these chats. It's always good chatting to awake veterans. I always think that's a massive positive. And Massive love to you all. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Chris.